Recent guest on the Joe Rogan Experience, George Roger Waters was born on September 9, 1943, in the village of Great Bookham, about 20 miles south of London. Co-founder of the progressive rock band Pink Floyd and the driving force behind some of the best conceptual albums in rock history. Very active politically, and as such a man that could spark some controversy. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and leave a like. Let's dig a little deeper and check out 12 things you may not know about Roger Waters. Number 12. His father died when he was only 5 months old. Waters' father drove an ambulance during the Blitz, serving in the early years of the Second World War as a conscientious objector, and on September 11, 1943, was appointed a second lieutenant in the 8th Battalion, Royal Fusiliers. But unfortunately, he passed away 5 months later, when Roger was only 5 months old in 1944, at Aprilia, Italy, during the Battle of Anzio. This has been revisited in many songs, but the final cut, a requiem for the post-war dream, deals with much of Roger's feelings about his father's death. After the tragic event, he moved with his mother and 2 brothers to Cambridge, where he eventually met other future associates with Pink Floyd. In 1914, in Italy, Waters erected a memorial around the site where his father passed away to honor him and the others who died in the war. He was also appointed as an honorary citizen of the city of Anzio. Number 11. He was dishonorably discharged from the cadet force. The purpose of the cadet force at Rogers School was to identify potential officers and career militaries, as well as to give basic military training. Roger, however, joined the combined cadet force because he couldn't bear how itchy the uniform was, and as a result, he occasionally spent the weekend at sea at HMS Ganges, a naval school that trained boys as young as 14 to become naval seamen. Initially, he was shocked by it all, but eventually became fond of life at sea and being a leading seaman. Part of it was because he enjoyed firing guns and dominating other people, as he said in interviews. As a consequence, he was roundly hated around, and on one particular weekend, he was set upon by a bunch of enraged schoolboys. It seemed like a foreshadowing of the attitude issues that would ultimately lead Roger to leave Pink Floyd. He eventually was dishonorably discharged after deciding that he didn't want to be part of it anymore. And because there was no provisions in the guidelines for resignation, he just returned his uniform and informed them that he would no longer be going. On his last school report, it was written, Waters never fulfilled his considerable potential and was dishonorably discharged from the cadet force. Number 10. He was the only to ever fail the 3rd year without being made a prefect. While on the cadet force, he failed on his A levels of math. As a result, he had to repeat the 3rd year. Actually, he was the only boy in the living memory of the school's history to have stayed on for a 3rd year in the 6th without being made a prefect, which is something Rogers remembers quite proudly. His violent nature with the other students, destroying school property, and dishonorable discharge might also have contributed to the decision of not making him a prefect. The time spent in this school served as an inspiration for writing Another Brick in the Wall. Number 9. Roger references his mom in Welcome to the Machine. As a great songwriter, most of Roger's inspiration and writings rely on his own life and experience, so it's no surprise to find in the lyrics some hints that describe a few of his own biographical details. In the second track of the famous Wish You Were Here iconic album, Welcome to the Machine, there's a line that reveals the first musical steps of Roger Waters when he sings, "You bought a guitar to punish your mom." Waters' mom offered him his first guitar back when he was 14 years old in 1957. Number 8. He was the director of the Youth Socialist of Cambridge at 15. Roger has always been very active politically, dating back to when he was a teenager. At 15, after a short-lived militarism of the naval cadets, he became involved as a chairman of the youth section of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament in Cambridge, dealing with young people and students who were not at the university. He took part in a number of marches for this cause, going from Aldermaston to London, and notoriously rose to the position, as well, of chairman of the Cambridge Youth Socialists, although he later believed that all of this was done more to impress his mother, who was a card-carrying communist until 1956, rather than act out of his own views. Number 7. Roger was a sharp sportsman. Although Roger can never recall happy memories from school, when asked in interviews, many of the friendships and future members and associates with Pink Floyd shared a collective physical sport with him. A few of them were part of the same teams he was on. Bob Close, ex-guitar player in the band's previous incarnation, and Storm Thorgerson, graphic designer of Pink Floyd, were both with Roger on the Country High cricket team. In addition to cricket, he also played rugby and had a team member, Jeff Motlow, who had a band called Jeff Mott and the Mottos, where Syd Barrett played guitar. Number 6. He's a big Arsenal fan. The mythic Liverpool chant, "You'll Never Walk Alone," was used in Pink Floyd's song Fearless, which made many people believe that Floyd's members were fans of the Reds, but that is simply not the case. In a Twitter video which focuses on an incident that Celtic fans made in response to what took place in Gaza, Roger, amid Celtic praise, confirmed that he was an Arsenal fan in the end. This love may be hinted in one of their songs, The Gunner's Dream, on the final cut. Despite being about World War II and the attacks that the IRA did in 1982 in the UK, the title was accordingly chosen by the two Arsenal fans Waters and Gilmour to allude and serve as a hint to their favorite soccer team. For Waters, Us and Them could probably be written in about two mega rivals in London, Arsenal and Chelsea. Number 5. Roger Waters joined Pink Floyd as a guitar player. Roger's first instrument in one of Pink Floyd's first incarnations was the guitar. He started as the lead guitar player, but soon after was replaced by Bob Close and shifted to rhythm guitarist. Later on, he refused to acquire a better and more expensive electric guitar, and coinciding with Syd Barrett's joining the band, he switched to his iconic position as we know him, as the bass player. As Waters is recalled by other members and associative of the band as a not very developed musician, Nick Manson, the drummer, later remembered in an interview how thankful he was that Roger wasn't pushed to the drum kit, which would have made him a roadie. Number 4. Roger spitting on a fan sparked the idea for The Wall. There was a specific moment at his show that sparked the idea for the conception of the iconic album. It happened during the Animals tour of 1977 at a concert in Montreal's Olympic Stadium. This huge sports stadium with a futuristic tower built for the Olympic Games a year earlier had a very cold and distant feel between the audience and the band. During the concert, a group of fans that were closest to the stage shouted suggestions throughout the show, and thus setting the mood the band had for the audience. In between songs, Roger caught the attention of one fan in particular that was yelling at him to play "Careful with that axe," which caused him to lose his composure and spit on the heckler. This episode served as a way for the members of the band to reflect on the growing difficulty of bonding with the audience, and as a basis for the iconic album that revolves around the physical and emotional gap between the fans and their idols. The record expands on this and revolves around isolation, alienation, and communication problems. Number 3. Roger is amongst the 10 wealthiest bass players ever. He wrote one of the most critically acclaimed records in history, The Dark Side of the Moon. Huge commercial success, having spent 936 weeks on the Billboard 200 chart and selling 45 million copies worldwide. Besides all the other albums largely written by him, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, and The Final Cut, he left the band in 1985 due to a few issues with the others, having performed on 12 of the 15 albums of Pink Floyd. Nevertheless, he still managed to keep relevant in the music industry, releasing 4 solo albums. In March 2003, his second album, Radio KAOS, reached 24th on Classic Rock Magazine's list of the 30 greatest concept albums of all time. Live shows are another quite impressive and lucrative aspect of Roger Waters' adventures. In 1989, when the Berlin Wall was taken down, he performed one of the most memorable rock concerts in history. It was repeated in 1990 with 1 billion people watching it on TV. So it's no surprise that Roger is amongst the top 10 wealthiest bass players of all time, amassing $310 million in total assets. Number 2. Waters has supported boycotts against Israel for over 16 years. Rogers has been politically active before the days of Pink Floyd and has drawn a lot of attention in the last few years against the state of Israel and its concern with Palestine by supporting the BDS movement. This movement started in 2005 in Palestinian civil society and promotes boycott, divestment, and economic sanctions against the Israeli government, with the aim of pressuring Israel to comply with what the movement describes as Israel's obligations under international law. Ever since he started supporting the movement, he has tried to persuade other artists from performing in Israel. Such names include Bon Jovi, Radiohead, and Nick Cave. In 2019, he started an unsuccessful and controversial petition to oppose Israel from hosting the Eurovision Song Contest. Although the petition was supported by fellow rock legend Peter Gabriel, it had a lot of other famous critics who made a rival petition signed by Stephen Fry, Sharon Osbourne, and Gene Simmons, to name a few. Number 1. He's partially tone deaf. In an interview, Roger recalled how his mother did not encourage his creativity and claimed to be tone deaf. From the recollections of his colleagues and studio staff, this seems to be something that may have transcended a generation all the way back to Roger himself. He actually learned he couldn't sing the way he wanted during the recording of the third song, Have a Cigar, of the album Wish You Were Here, so they had no choice but to bring in a guest singer after David Gilmour declined to do it. In addition to all of this, he used to wear earpieces in concerts so that he would have a little help singing more in pitch. One particular incident that illustrates his inability is when he was still in Pink Floyd. His bass guitars were usually tuned by the keyboardist Richard Wright before there were fancy tuners around. Although probably not a huge case of tone deafness, he still managed to become the main force behind one of the most successful bands of all time and continues to fill out venues and touring across the world.